It's the most wonderful time of the year in college sports. March Madness is in full swing as we head into the Sweet 16. We'll have plenty of conversation about that and more to come on Dorm Room Sports Chat. Everyone, and good evening to you from our studio in the Park Student Union. I'm Joey Petrello. Per usual, I'm joined by Go AZ Cats reporters Evan Murray and Danny Passavoy. Coming into the NCAA tournament as a number one seed, the Arizona basketball team had heavy expectations on its shoulders. So far, the Wildcats have been able to handle the pressure, and after a pair of over 10-point wins, they find themselves in a second straight Sweet 16. On Friday at the Viejas Arena at Aztec Bowl in San Diego, California, Arizona defeated the number 16-seeded Weber State of the Big Sky Conference by a final score 68-59. The Wildcats were hot from the floor all night, shooting just over 55% overall and hit 7 of 14 three-point attempts as well. Nick Johnson led the team with 18 points, and Aaron Gordon added 16 with 8 rebounds and tallied 5 of Arizona's 11 total blocked shots in the game. So, Evan, Gordon has looked sharper than ever on both sides of the floor. Talk about his defense in the tournament and also his knack for getting to the rim.
I think more than anything with Aaron Gordon, it's his confidence. You can tell even with his free throws. I mean, that's kind of where it starts. We saw him actually finish a three-point play, hitting the free throw in the very beginning of the game. That's the kind of stuff that gets him going, I think. Once he sees the ball go in, things like that. And he's always been good at getting to the rim. I mean, definitely when you have Nick Johnson throwing him an oop in the very beginning of the game.
And McConnell.
Right, and so that's just the kind of stuff that gets him going. And once that confidence really comes, I think no one can stop Aaron Gordon. And he gets that light in his eyes. He did against SDSU and Viejas earlier in the season. So I think that was just like something familiar for him. So I think that second chance points and things like that just come from confidence.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it comes from confidence in the offense, and especially if you can get that offense set early, that's what's key to everything. Like you saw in the first play of the game with that dunk, like you said, from McConnell. First play right away, Aaron Gordon to the hoop, scores. He knows he can score in this game right from the get-go. He knows he's going to have a good game. And you really saw him turn it on. He had a 19-15 game late in the season. And after that, we saw a different Aaron Gordon. We saw an Aaron Gordon who can shoot the three. He went one film today from three. No, I get that's not a big part of his game.
I was going to say,
but he has the confidence enough to take that. And you're no longer saying, like, Aaron, don't shoot that from the three. Like,
see, I still say that. I know that he made that 1-3. In the beginning of the game, and then he went for another one, and I'm sitting there.
But you're not freaking out about it like you did at the beginning of the season.
Yeah,
you know that there's a definite shot he can hit that. He's confident in his game right now, and he's confident in his shot.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that. That's what he needs to be, and when the offense is rolling like that, he's happy, and when he's happy, he's dominant.
You're right, and it's I think more than anything, and it seems so lame or so small, is the free throw. Like when he first made that free throw, just because he makes them so seldom. So it's just like I really felt like that. Even that was something that really boosted his confidence and made him start attacking even on defense. Like you said, offense translates to defense, defense translates to offense. It all connects. So.
Well, after Weber State for Arizona was then the 8th-seeded Gonzaga. And the game was not at all like the epic double overtime contest these programs played 11 years prior in the tournament. The Cats did everything right. They shot terrifically. They played swarming defense and were even hitting their free throws en route to an 84-61 victory over the Bulldogs to advance to the Sweet 16. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson provided quite a spark off the bench, scoring a career-high 18 points to go with 6 rebounds and 4 blocks. Arizona's other 4 blocks in the game came from Nick Johnson, who also had 17 points. So, Danny, starter or bench player, just about everyone contributed. I just want you to talk about how unselfish this team is and how they've been able to gel, especially this late in the season.
From top to bottom, doesn't matter what mixture of guys you put out there, they just love playing together. And you see that so well, especially late in the game, in games that they're up by 20. Nick Johnson, McConnell, Gordon, all on the bench, standing up and rooting for the guys to score, rooting for the guys that don't get in that often. Well, I guess in this team they get in decently often. But the guys that don't get that much playing time, they're jumping up and down for them to score, for them to hit threes. That's what a team is, and that's called team chemistry. And when you have that, you can do anything. And I didn't pick Arizona to win the championship or like to go all the way. But after seeing them against Gonzaga, how well they were able to move the ball offensively, their defense is there already, but how well they were able to move the ball offensively and just their unselfishness, this team can definitely go to the finals, Final Four, or win the championship if you have that kind of team chemistry.
And there's some serious truth to that. And I think that more than anything, you mentioned the second half of the game where they're sitting there cheering on their bench warmers, for the most part, bench warmers, right? Because a lot of the guys do get to play more often than not.
Someone has to do it.
But even in the first half of the game, you knew this was going to be a great game just because it looked like they were having fun. Starting from the alley-oops, I think that's what gets that team off the most, is just seeing their teammates succeed and make that shot that they assisted to. And that's why I think TJ McConnell is so great with this team, is because I think every player on that team cares about each other and if they make that shot. And so I think that's really, I agree with you. I didn't have Arizona winning it at all. I had them in the championship game in one of my brackets, but I didn't even really believe that. But if this team plays that way, because it's so crucial, like you said, defense is already there. If they have the offensive game that they had against Gonzaga, who's stopping them?
Right.
So It's just, and I think that's confidence, and I think that's having fun. When this team has fun, that's when they play their best. And I think, obviously, success brings more fun. Any bad game, nobody's having fun. But it's just really that confidence that I think brings out.
Of course.
The best in this team.
And this is a team that they all know their roles, but their roles just mix together.
And
Right.
they're all
incredibly
happy
well.
with those roles.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And you know what? At the end of the game, who do you want taking the last shot? Probably Nick Johnson.
Right.
But Nick Johnson is probably equally as confident in anyone else
Gabe
taking
York,
that last shot.
Aaron Gordon.
Anyone.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you have the leaders on this team, and you have the veteran leaders, and a guy like Nick Johnson, who's your basically coach on the court with you. But at the same time, if he has equal confidence in every other player to take that shot,
And we've seen other guys
Who's gonna beat them?
take last
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
TJ
I mean,
McConnell tried to take the last shot against ASU. Granted, he got swatted, but still,
Right.
he was trusted with the last shot by the rest of his teammates.
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, well, up next, the Wildcats will face the number 4 seeded San Diego State in the Sweet 16. Early on in the regular season, Arizona beat the Aztecs on the road 69-60. So, guys, how do you like this matchup?
I love this matchup. I think any time that you can have a rematch is a great thing, definitely when it's Steve Fisher's team. I know he's being kind of secretive. I've heard some quotes from Steve Fisher about kind of his game plan against Arizona. He's keeping everything very hush-hush. I know SDSU and U of A have very similar offenses and defenses, as in they're both very strong defensively and not very strong offensively. But when certain guys go off, they both have the ability to be great. And so I think that's what makes this game so much fun. And not to mention, I mean, Arizona beat SDSU by 9 points last game, and with Brandon Ashley. So it's not like this is a guaranteed blowout by Arizona like with SDSU. So it should be a really good game.
I got into, not a heated argument, but I got in an argument with my dad over this because my dad went to San Diego State, so he's a big Aztec homer. But at the same time, I think this is a game that Arizona handles San Diego State. And I say that like this. Thames, when he's not in the game, their offense is not good. Like, they're stagnant. They're not moving off ball. They're not a very good offensive team if he's in foul trouble. Now you go against probably the number 1 but rated 4th best defense in the country with probably the best perimeter defender in Nick Johnson. He's going to go up against Thames for sure.
Right.
They're not going to put McConnell on him. You take him out of the game, where's their offense? And I know that they played us super well earlier in the season, but this is a different team without Brandon Ashley. They're more spread out. They're faster. And San Diego State's a great defensive team. They run a 1-3-1 zone, which is very good, and it was very tough for Arizona to handle. But at the same time, this is a faster team, a more spread out team who's faster at passing the ball.
And you bring up a good point. I mean, obviously, I think that we all know that Arizona does not have the best offensive team. And you mentioned that SDSU can get very stagnant, and that's something I don't think Arizona really gets. I feel like they are always moving, and so that's the one thing that kind of works for Arizona's offense is that you still have options. While SDSU, if you don't have Thimes in there, then it kind of gets Thames. Sorry about that. Then it does get more stagnant and almost impossible to kind of produce any offense.
I mean, well, it's going to be interesting to see, but there's a reason why Vegas has this as the biggest spread of the Sweet 16, and I happen to agree. I think Arizona's defense really shuts them down. San Diego State had a great season. All the credit to them, but Steve Fisher's run ends here. He's come back next season, but this year, I think this is the end of the road.
So you're picking them in a blowout, Evan?
Not a blowout, but I think they cover.
At least 10 points?
Nah, at least 7 or 8.
7 or 8.
I would say the same thing, to be honest. I think it's going to be a good game. I don't think Arizona's going to blow them out, like you said, or ever get comfortable. But
Well, the first time they played it was 69-60, so kind of something like that.
Yeah.
I think
absolutely.
it could be similar.
But even then, that game was closer than the score, and it turned it out to be Arizona hit. I think Nick Johnson hit 5 free throws to end that game to kind of seal it.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a little bit bigger lead, and it cuts down to 9 or 8 before the game's over.
All right, well, tip-off for that game will be at 7:17 p.m. It's a weird time, on Thursday at the Honda Center in Anaheim, California. We're talking more college hoops when we get back, so don't change the channel. You're watching Dorm Room Sports Chat on UA TV Channel 3.
Hi, it's David Hasselhoff, the Hawk. Get Hawk with UA TV. Stay tuned. Don't change the dial.
Thanks for tuning into DRSC. I'm Joey Petrello alongside Danny Passavoy and Evan Murray. Let's dive back into the big dance. There has been many upsets, and a lot of highly seeded teams have already been eliminated. This is including number 1 seeded Wichita State, who lost to 8th seeded Kentucky, a number 3 seeded Duke team that was bounced in the first round by 14th seeded Mercer. Syracuse, also coming in as a number 3 seed, lost to the 11th seeded Dayton, and 2nd seeded Kansas fell to the Pac-12 Stanford. The Cardinal were a number 10 seed. So, Evan, you're shaking your head. I know that you are a Jayhawks fan.
Absolutely.
Which was the most surprising upset to you?
I have to say that the Wichita State Kentucky game was not that big of a surprise to anyone, I don't think. I was surprised personally. I know Stanford was actually a pretty tough matchup for Kansas, not having Joel Embiid. So did that really surprise me? No, because I don't think Kansas really got their rhythm at the end of the season without him. Trying to think of who really surprised me, because in March it's so hard to be surprised most of the time.
How about Duke getting bounced in the first round?
To be honest, I haven't been a big fan of Duke this whole season, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm convinced on Jabari Parker. I think he's great.
I am
but
too.
besides that, I don't think they have much of a front line. I just wasn't that surprising to me, and I don't know why, but so
They've done it before.
right, and it's just to me, and I think Coach K even kind of agreed, hey, we could beat most teams and we could lose to just about anyone too, and that's how I felt about our season, and that's how I felt about Duke's season, to be completely honest. So it's March, it's madness. I don't know, nothing really surprises me at this point.
I mean, Duke Mercer is definitely the biggest upset of the tournament, especially when you have Mercer losing by 20 to Tennessee in the third round.
But matchups, it's all about matchups.
I understand that, but when you have a team with Jabari Parker and Rodney Hood, You shouldn't lose that many games, especially to a team like Mercer. I'm sorry, but that was a horrible loss for the second year in a row. A loss that I'm surprised about is Wichita, but I'm only saying that because of how well Kentucky played.
Absolutely.
That's
a good point.
This is a Kentucky team that can go to the Final Four, and nobody thought of that before this game. They played so incredibly well.
Because wouldn't you...
For a team with 5 starting freshmen,
right.
They played so incredibly well. It was unbelievable. And they really turned this into a game, especially when you have Clay Anthony early scoring 31 points for Wichita.
Right,
Kentucky, they came out of basically nowhere as an 8 seed. Granted, horrible 8 seed for Wichita State to draw. And obviously the tournament committee didn't give much of credit to Wichita. But at the same time, set up a great. I mean, I had Wichita in the Sweet 16.
See, this is why I liked the Kentucky Wichita State matchup, is because I feel like more people gave credit to Wichita State after they lost that game to Kentucky.
Yeah, but you also had all the people saying, "Oh, see, like they lost to a big team."
But not. I feel like people who know college basketball wouldn't say that.
No, I
mean,
like
so how I feel. My opinion is I gave more credit to Wichita State after they lost to Kentucky, because Kentucky looks so good.
Kentucky looked unbelievable.
Their athleticism, their talent, it finally was coming together, and it was crazy to see that team grow up in that game.
I really thought that they were going to make that last shot, but having Willie Cauley-Stein, huge guy out there, there's no way that.
Well, they just went with the wrong guy. Why wouldn't you go with Clay Anthony, who had just been hitting them?
You had to, but at the same time, how are you not gonna give the ball to Van Vliet?
And not to mention, can I just comment on that game as well? Greg Marshall didn't call the timeout he waited 4 seconds to call the timeout. Either let your team score in transition or don't call the or call the timeout right away. I was so mad about that, and it's weird. I'm from Kansas. I'm a Kansas fan. I'm not a big Wichita State person. I don't mind, but I was like, come on, Greg Marshall.
Well, Florida and Virginia are the other 2 top-seeded squads left in the tournament besides Arizona. The Gators steamrolled Albany and Sean Miller's alum Pittsburgh by a combined 38 points to get to the Sweet 16, while the Hokies thrashed Coastal Carolina and Memphis by a total 29 points. So, Danny, which number 1 seeded program left do you think has the most potential to win it all?
Well, in my opinion, after watching the first couple rounds of the tournament, I think it comes down to Arizona and Florida in the finals.
Me too.
I mean, Harvard is a great team. They are a great team, but they should not have been in that game against Michigan State. Michigan State totally let them back in it. Good win for them. I don't think they have the oomph to get to the championship game anymore. I think it's Florida. Florida's blowing teams out, and especially a team like Pitt, who blew the lights off of Colorado. Florida's good. UCLA is going to give them a tough time down the stretch, though. UCLA is a great offensive team who spreads the ball out a lot like Arizona. They have a lot of shooters on that team. I know Levine hasn't really been playing that well in the second half of the season, but Jordan Adams, Kyle Anderson, Norman Powell, they have some great offensive players. I still think Florida gets past them, and if they do, I think it's Florida-Arizona final.
Yeah, I'm with Florida. Obviously, Danny talked quite a bit about it, but I mean, I think they struggled against Albany, and we all saw that. But when it came to Pitt, to see them blow them out like that was pretty. And Scotty Wilbekin is just unreal.
I mean,
not to mention
Patrick
Young, though. Patrick Young was really stepping up too. That team is full of mature players, and I think that the reason why they've won so many games in a row is just because they have the ability and the maturity to get past those teams, even when they are in tight situations. And I think that's what makes a championship team too.
And we're talking about having a chip on your shoulder. How about Wilbekin, a guy who's suspended twice this season, had to leave the team, like just go to his parents' house and like chill out for a while because he was a little bit like just going too crazy. How about a guy with a chip on his shoulder? He's changing the game for Florida right now.
Absolutely.
Well, it's pretty crazy that these 3 teams from the Pac-12 are still alive in the tournament. And Oregon, they even came pretty close themselves, almost taking down Wisconsin.
Right.
But the one other connection to Arizona basketball in the Sweet 16 is Dayton's head coach, Archie Miller. He is the younger brother of 10 years to Sean Miller. The two are college basketball's first ever brothers to be head coaches in the same Sweet 16. In case you haven't seen Archie yet, here is a very short but hilarious interview he did with the CBS Sports Network. Don't be confused by the host calling him Sean.
Sean, I sure hope you're happier on the inside than you appear to be on the outside, because you and your brother are both in the Sweet 16. Or your brother Archie. Sean.
Yeah, you know what? I think one of the... Hello?
We're here. All right. Thank you, Coach. AT&T at the half continues in a moment.
All right, well, we are going to come back, and after we'll play a quick game of Contender or Pretender, and then we'll finish off with a faster game of 30 seconds. You're watching Dorman Sports Chat on UATV Channel 3.
I'm Derek Williams, the former U of A Wildcat. You're watching UATV. Don't change the channel.
Welcome back to DRSC. I'm Joey Petrella with my colleagues Danny Passavoy and Evan Murray. Since we've only talked college hoops, let's cover some other bases with a little game of Contender or Pretender. I'll give a name of a player or team, and the analysts decide if he, she, or they is a contender or a pretender. Simple enough. Here we go. Over the break, Arizona baseball went 1-6. The Wildcats' overall record now is 11-15. Their head coach, Andy Lopez, continues to say things will get better, but the ship is slowly starting to sink deeper and deeper. So, guys, is Coach Lopez a contender or pretender?
I mean, I feel like at this point, they're not going to make the playoffs, so he's a pretender in that aspect. It's just weird Andy Lopez is an honest guy, so I feel like at the same time, he could feel like his team's going to get better, but at the end of the day, they're not going to be good enough. So, I mean, pretender in the fact that they're not making the playoffs.
Okay, Andy Lopez and pretenders should never. I understand that they're 11-15,
right?
But they should never be used in the same sentence. This is a guy who's won 2 national championships with 2 different teams, and he's one of the highest winning coaches in college baseball history. Those two should never be in the same sentence. Obviously, a contender. They had 15 wins last year, so they're not going to make the playoffs this season. But Andy Lopez is one of the best coaches in the game. That you'll find. So he's absolutely a contender.
What's the problem then over the past 2 seasons? They won the national championship, and then what do you think is the problem?
Right now, it's absolutely pitching. And that was the problem coming into the season, and that's the problem it is right now. You have James Ferris, who's a guy who will be drafted probably lower than he was drafted last year.
Do you think that now?
Yeah, absolutely. But you don't have a number 2 guy. Cody Hamlin's a good junior college pitcher. And he's a solid college pitcher, but in no staff on a top 25 team is Cody Hamlin a number 2 guy.
Yeah.
And then after that, put Schnabel out there, and he got shelled. He put Ehrman out there a couple weeks ago, and he got shelled.
Tiger Talley did
pretty
well.
But who are you going to put there? You don't have a solid guy. And at this point of the season, you have 15 losses already. Try something new. Put Xavier Board there. Put Tyler Parmenter there. Cody Moffitt there. Someone new. But it all comes down to pitching staff, and it just didn't cut it this year.
But the reason I asked about Andy Lopez, though, Danny, is because is he bringing in the wrong guys, or what do you think? Because he's usually consistent about making the playoffs, but the past 2 years they're saying there's a standard here, and
it's not Andy Lopez saying. I'll tell you that.
Sure.
I mean, he didn't. It's not,
but at the same time, he's got to feel that way. That his standard is be in the postseason every year.
Absolutely. But think about Tom Crean right now at Indiana. They're not in the tournament. He has good players. Noah Vonleh is going to the NBA, but they're not in the tournament. You know,
Yeah, but you're talking about a program rather than a coach. I don't think of Tom Crean as
no, absolutely, but it's the same.
Indiana necessarily.
It doesn't matter. It's a good coach at a good school who should have good players, and it's not like they don't. Morgan Ehrman was drafted in the 21st round by the Mets. I mean, like, they have a lot of guys who are like minor league MLB caliber guys. It's just not panning out right now, and this is just a tough stretch. But Andy Lopez will definitely get through it. He knows how to recruit with the best of them.
All right, well, let's finish off in style and cap this episode of DRSC off with a quick game of 30 seconds where Danny, Evan, and I each have a half-minute to voice any particular topic we want in sports. Evan, you're leading off.
Well, I want to talk about Baylor. I feel like there's a lot of Baylor haters out there, and I understand because they've had mediocre seasons for the past 2 years. They kind of get blown out in the tournament pretty fast, but this Baylor team is hot. They've won 8 of their last 9 games. They beat Iowa State at Baylor and then lost to Iowa State at Iowa State. Nonetheless, they blew out Creighton by 30. This team is hot. I think they have a really good chance at beating Wisconsin. If knowing Baylor's defense, if Wisconsin slips up on offense, which is their absolute best quality, then Wisconsin's in trouble. And I think I like to see Baylor succeed, so I'm excited to watch them play against Wisconsin and possibly make it to the Elite Eight.
Well, I like them too, but I don't know. I think this could be the end of the road for Baylor. What about you, Danny?
I'm going to go with my favorite game of the Sweet 16, which is UConn versus Iowa State. Now, Iowa State doesn't have George Niang, who, not their best player. Kane is by far their best player, and you saw it when he made the layup to win the game the other day. Cold-blooded. Big Daddy Kane, one of the best players in college basketball right now. But without Niang, this is a great game, and you're going against a UConn team with Shabazz Napier, who is my favorite guard other than Thames in college basketball. Talk about cold-blooded. He went out with an ankle injury, came back, and killed it for UConn to win that game. That's my favorite game of the week, and I'm so excited to watch it.
All right, I'll close this out. With the Duke and Mercer game, a fan tweeted to Roddy White saying that he thought that Mercer was going to win. Roddy White tweets back saying, if Duke loses, then I'll give you season tickets on the 50-yard line. And this is for the Atlanta Falcons Stadium. The 50-yard line season tickets. And Duke ends up losing, and Roddy White is not down to give him it. I just think that's bogus. Come through. You can get those tickets.
I agree with you. I'm not about that either. I feel like if you're gonna say that,
if you're gonna say
on Twitter,
it,
social
man
media,
up to it.
That means everything these days.
I completely disagree. I mean,
if you're gonna say it,
I mean, I get that, but that could totally have been in a joking manner. He's got him 50-yard line tickets to see the Bears, and he's flying them out to see them. That's not
okay. So they are doing something.
That's.
They're giving
him
one ticket.
They're flying the guy out to see the Bears. He's gonna meet Roddy White.
A promise.
Yeah, okay.
A promise is a promise. If I promised you guys something, I would give it to you. That's it for this episode.
Joey.
That's it for this episode of DRSC. We'd like to thank you for tuning in and hope you will again next Monday. For our analysts, Danny Passavoy and Evan Murray, I'm Joey Petrello, cordially wishing you a wonderful good night. You are watching Dorman Sports Chat on UATV, Channel 3.